Tonight, the Trumps versus the CBC.
Down the hall and to the left.
The president joked a holiday classic will never be the same. His son accuses the network of political gamesmanship. Cutting Trump from Home Alone 2 5 years ago is making them mad now. A Boxing Day crush at a Vancouver mall sends airport travel into chaos.
I'm so sad about it.
A typhoon rips through parts of the Philippines, and the Filipino community here in Canada is on alert. And it's Thursday, which means At Issue is here. This is the next one. So the CBC has turned up in the U.S. president's Twitter feed tonight because a 1992 film the network has been airing for years has a minor edit that cuts him out of it. Jacqueline Hansen shows us how just about anything now on either side of the border gets political, especially when it involves Donald Trump.
For some, including his fictional family, it's not Christmas without Kevin McAllister.
Excuse me, where's the lobby?
Down the hall and to the left.
Thanks.
That 8-second appearance by Donald Trump is tradition for him, too.
A lot of people mention it every year, especially around Christmas.
But you wouldn't have seen that moment if you'd watched Home Alone 2 on CBC. It was cut. The edit was picked up by news outlets everywhere, from mainstream to the right-wing Breitbart. Even Donald Trump's son tweeted about it, calling the move pathetic.
Both sides have an opportunity to read something into this that perhaps isn't there. And that, I think, in a lot of ways speaks to the politics of the moment, where sometimes facts don't necessarily matter.
That's right.
Fox News accused the Canadian broadcaster of trying to write Trump out of pop culture history.
But how bad is your Trump derangement syndrome for you to cut that out of a happy movie?
The president also tweeted tonight, blaming the edit on the prime minister not liking his stance on NATO or trade, and joking that the movie will never be the same. But trimming the Christmas classic wasn't a political move, according to CBC. It cut 8 minutes to fit commercial breaks. The broadcaster said in a statement, these edits were done in 2014, before Mr. Trump was elected president.
Pleasure to introduce.
The president built his brand in pop culture, always playing himself, with a long list of cameos from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
It's the Donald! Oh my God!
To the Little Rascals.
Waldo, you're the best son money can buy.
That past has created uncharted territory for broadcasters who, after today, face a difficult and political decision.
Now, if they put it back in, it's going to look like, okay, they're just bowing to whatever anybody is tweeting out there. And then they're going to make the other half of the population mad.
With a presidential election between now and next holiday season, whatever happens at the White House, the broadcasters may still be in a no-win situation. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Washington.
So as you heard there, Home Alone 2 is usually edited by networks to fit into a TV time slot, up to about 20 minutes, nipped here and there to preserve the plot.
My family's in Florida. I'm in New York.
Before Donald Trump, the edit that sparked conversation was this one. Young Kevin surveying New York from the roof of the World Trade Center, commonly cut for TV for some pretty obvious reasons after 9/11. Boxing Day shoppers here in Canada were out in force today, though not in the same numbers as years past. Black Friday, a U.S. import that falls in November, has now eclipsed December 26th as Canada's favorite day to find bargains. But you wouldn't know that from the look of a certain mall in Vancouver. Salima Shivji shows us a retail cyclone that touches down Christmas after Christmas.
A crush of shoppers chasing the lure of a sweet deal.
Everything was 50% off with already a discount, so it was nice.
This is the first time that I'm here, but I think the deals are really good. I'm fighting with the crowds, but it's okay, it's worthy, it's completely worthy.
It's wild, crazy crowds.
Crazy to even get to the outlet. It sits right near Vancouver's airport, and with only 2 bridges leading to the terminal, travelers get stuck in stop and start traffic on one of the busiest travel days of the year. This family is already late to pick up Olivia's father.
There's nothing we can really do. It's just terrible traffic.
Stressful for others trying to catch a flight.
Well, we didn't know that we might miss our flight because of Boxing Day shoppers. They should do something about the transportation system here. They should never allow a shopping mall to do this to international flights. It's totally crazy.
It's because of Boxing Day sales at the outlet mall.
Oh my God. They should have planned this better. They should have had traffic control or something.
A problem that's getting worse every year. The airport's traffic control plan is to suggest taking the SkyTrain. Again this year, YVR sent out warnings to ticket holders. Plan ahead and leave much earlier than usual. The mall also tries to promote public transit.
We work very closely with YVR and the RCMP to ensure that we have a traffic plan in place that allows people to get to the airport and to the center. So we ensure that we have flaggers on site, we have people directing cars.
But experts say this gridlock is the result of poor planning without thinking of future growth.
If you want to reduce congestion, you need to have good accessibility for other modes of transport. And from a public transport perspective, it's fairly limited.
And it's not about to get better. The outlet mall just expanded and plans to add more stores in the coming years. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Richmond, BC.
A hallmark of these big bargain rituals is lining up outside, waiting for a store to open.
No running, I just don't want anybody to get hurt, okay?
Notice how these Manitoba shoppers are all very orderly, very Canadian as they file in. It was the same at Toronto's big downtown mall. Nothing like the crushing commotion we're used to seeing in the U.S. Canada may have adopted Black Friday, but we do all these things in our own way. We are following some breaking news tonight. A plane with 95 passengers and 5 crew members on board has crashed in Kazakhstan's largest city. Local authorities say that plane crashed into a 2-story building shortly after takeoff near Almaty's airport on Friday morning local time. The plane is owned by Beck Air. That's a low-cost domestic airline. The country's civil aviation authority says at least 9 people were killed, so there are survivors, and emergency officials say they are being taken to safety. The plane was headed for the capital city of Nur Sultan. Communities across the Indian Ocean coastlines have just marked an event that devastated and reshaped them. 15 years ago today, a tsunami swept away homes and lives in more than a dozen countries. Carolyn Dunn shows us what's changed and the fear that still remains.
Children too young to have experienced the tsunami have grown up knowing its toll. This sand artist says we're lighting candles for the peace of the souls across coastal areas. A magnitude 9 earthquake, the 3rd largest on record, triggered the Indian Ocean tsunami 15 years ago today. About 230,000 people in 14 countries were killed. Waves nearing 15 meters quite literally washed away entire coastal communities. This mother lost a daughter and son, then her husband to grief. He became delusional, she says. Now he just roams the streets and never comes home. In the past 15 years, there has been much rebuilding and upgrading.
Attention, all clear.
Including an early tsunami warning system and an app to warn coastal residents of the Indian Ocean.
And to disseminate this among people, we have 54 early warning centers, which is the final stages of construction.
One of the people keeping watch for tsunamis is known as Indonesia's miracle survivor. Arif Munandar woke up in a body bag 4 days after the tsunami. His wife and 3 children were dead. I'm an orphan now, he says, but the only place for me to live is where the tsunami hit. But the warnings can't stop waves. If we encounter it again, this forensic pathologist who identified tsunami victims back then says, I'm not confident we can handle it. For many, surviving the tsunami means reliving it. Sometimes I dream a wave is coming, she says. It's an image I remember. It still haunts me. Especially today as people gather once again to pay homage to the dead. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, London.
In the Philippines, at least 28 people have died after a powerful typhoon roared through the center of the country. Tonight, Global Affairs says there are no reports of Canadians among those killed. Still, as Livia Stefanovic reports, many in the large Filipino community here in Canada are anxiously watching and waiting for news from back home.
So this is their family here?
Yeah, their family, my sister, my cousin.
Grace Pradiga pauses over photos of her relatives. Back home, now facing uncertainty.
I'm so sad about it.
Pradiga hasn't heard from her family since Typhoon Phanphone made landfall on Tuesday night and carved a deadly path through coastal towns throughout Christmas Day. Wind gusts of up to 150 kilometers per hour uprooted holiday celebrations, knocking out power in some provinces, toppling trees, and flooding homes. Officials say more than 58,000 people fled in anticipation of Phanphone's rage. 15,000 others were stranded at ports when ferry services were suspended. Typhoons hit every year at this time in the South Pacific. This one struck close to the regions hit by the 2013 Typhoon Haiyan, one of the most powerful tropical cyclones ever recorded. The Philippines is a predominantly Catholic country. Pope Francis invited the faithful to join him in prayer today for the victims, saying he joins them in the pain. Back in Canada, members of the Filipino community share a meal and share thoughts of the devastation.
I'm hoping that they will be fine and they could pass this calamity that comes to the Philippines.
A hope she'll grip tightly until word finally comes. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Toronto.
It is an annual Boxing Day tradition. The World Junior Hockey Championships got underway today in the Czech Republic. And this year, Team Canada is looking for redemption.
They're loose in front, he scores! Lafreniere, and Canada's back on top!
And there you go. Team Canada won 6-4 in its opener against the United States. A good start for the country, and there's plenty of pressure on the team. Canada is looking to rebound after a historically bad result last year when the team was eliminated by Finland in the quarterfinals. The tournament continues tomorrow when Canada faces Russia. And millions of Canadians will be tuning in to watch the juniors play over the next 2 weeks. Hockey is undeniably a passion in this country. It certainly seems part of the national identity. But for newcomers, there isn't always a clear path to learning how to play the game. Katie Nicholson with how some people are working to change just that.
The path to becoming Canadian can be a little slippery. But these kids are getting a helping hand. And a crash course on how to play Canada's game. All in the name of helping new Canadians develop a better sense of belonging. Moazine Hisham started Hockey for Youth 4 years ago.
My parents came to Canada in 1972 from Uganda, and I was born in Vancouver. I was given my first set of hockey equipment by our neighbor who still lives across the street from my mom. And they said, you should put your youngest son into hockey, and my parents obliged, and it gave me an opportunity to feel socially included. We're also going to do some turning today.
He's now extending that opportunity to hundreds of other kids from 30 countries who also just want to belong.
What you want to do is make sure you put more of an emphasis on your rotating your ankle. So
Keelan Farron volunteers with Hockey for Youth.
I grew up kind of part Indian and part Scottish. There you go, and then you cross over just like that, yeah.
But it's hockey that has played a key part in Farron's Canadian identity.
Definitely, I think of like winter days where you kind of go on the pond in the backyard. You're kind of just always outside in the snow and skating. I think hockey is just something that I see myself as when I say, I'm Keelan, I'm a hockey player. Are you excited?
Farron and the rest of the Ryerson Rams women's hockey team provide a steady hand to guide the kids.
Yeah, I did the whole thing without falling. The whole thing. Hockey belongs to everyone. It's not just people who can know how to play the sport, but people who want to watch a sport, who maybe want to get involved in the sport. I think it just extends further than just playing the game and just growing to love the game.
You're ready.
And it appears to be working. Gaurav Akram is from India, where field hockey is big, ice hockey, not so much.
Skating on ice was.
But he's learning.
In future also a chance to play hockey, like join it.
You want them tighter? Just let me know. Cool?
And that's exactly what Moazine Hisham wants to hear.
It's pretty emotional in a positive way. I think about the kids who, you know, some of the things that they've gone through. But every time they're out on the ice, you get to see those smiles. When they fall for the first time, it's amazing to see them get back up. And that's what we talk about all the time is when you fall, you get back up and you try again. Hey, buddy.
And for Hisham, this program is deeply personal.
For me, I always tell my mom and my dad that it's kind of a full circle experience in terms of they put me into hockey and now I'm using the game to give back.
And as the program expands into a third city, it's a gift that keeps on giving, the gift of hockey and belonging.
Okay, so all the way, follow me, let's go.
Let's go, hurry up. Go.
Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Still ahead, Joanna Miliotis took on a difficult story this year. It meant getting the trust of Canada's biggest transit system. A reporter's notebook is coming up. But next, the Newfoundland community that takes merry and bright to a whole new level. We're back in 2 minutes. Condolences are pouring in tonight for Kelly Fraser. The Juno-nominated Inuk singer-songwriter and activist has died. This is the video that made Fraser famous across northern Canada, singing the Rihanna song Diamonds in Inuktitut. Earlier this year, Fraser spoke with the CBC about why singing in her mother tongue so mattered.
As a daughter to a residential school survivor, I believe that keeping our language stronger will help my children, their children, and so on. And so we need to keep fighting to keep this communication alive.
The 26-year-old's family has started a GoFundMe page to help pay for her memorial. And CN says its crews are responding to a train derailment near the BC-Alberta border. It happened early this morning near Mount Robson in BC. 26 cars left the tracks, 2 becoming partially submerged in a nearby lake. CN says it's working with government authorities to determine if there's been an environmental impact. The train is used to transport potash. According to the company, there were no injuries. And Canada's Bianca Andreescu has added yet another accolade, named the Canadian Press 2019 Female Athlete of the Year. That U.S. Open win against Serena Williams made her the first Canadian to win a Grand Slam singles title. She also won 2 other tournaments, including the Rogers Cup, but she's been forced to withdraw from the first tournament of 2020 because of a knee injury. Lighting up a Christmas tree or front porch is pretty standard for many Canadians, but for 20 years, people in Port de Grave, Newfoundland have been taking their decorating to a whole other level. Chris O'Neill-Yates shows us the marine spectacle of lights that has tens of thousands of people just stopping by.
The fishing season behind them, the boats of Port de Grave are tied up. As evening sets in, they light up.
It's crazy. Some of these boats probably got up to 5,000 lights.
Many Newfoundland fishing communities have been down on their luck, but Port de Grave is prosperous. Fishermen have done well here, fishing shrimp and crab. It's that spirit of gratitude for their good fortune that drives this event, says Joyce Morgan, who's been at the helm since the beginning.
Every boat owner, they're so proud of their boats, and they're giving back to the community. They're giving back to anybody that comes here.
It all began with a string of lights on one boat 20 years ago. Now there is all this, and people come from all over just to experience a little bit of nautical Christmas spirit.
Paul Stead is one of about 30,000 people who'll make the trip here this holiday season.
It's great, I think, and it's probably been 10 years since I said I was going to come out, so I finally got here.
No detail has been left out. Some familiar characters, and a lot of creativity. Gear used to haul the daily catches, repurposed to bring festive joy.
I think it's gorgeous, and it's quite a community effort to achieve such a great Christmas in this little community, right?
It brings out the Christmas spirit, and to come down and see what people go through, just to get people to come and to see their community.
The numbers of decorated boats here has grown every year. This year, 68 are showing their true Christmas colors.
It's unbelievable. We never thought back in 1999 that we would be here today, and it's getting better, bigger and better every year.
The fish landed. Now it's visitors the community is reeling in to see the little and not so little boats of Newfoundland light up a cold winter's night. Chris O'Neill-Yates, CBC News, Port de Grave, Newfoundland.
Still ahead on the National, the biggest political moments of the year and what's in store for 2020. Rosie will be here with At Issue. Althea, Andrew, and Chantal weigh in. Plus, in our reporter's notebook, Joanna Remiliotis on telling a story about public transit few ever want to discuss. In 2019, covering Canada meant shining a light in every corner of the country and tracking the stories that kept people on edge for weeks. Our reporters looked at how we work and how we play, and oh, how we played. We showed you how Canadians push ahead through hardship, and sometimes how it all becomes too much. In the fall, Joanna Remiliotis told us about life and death on Toronto's subway system. Now, suicide is a topic we treat with particular care, so when it's at the very heart of a story, it's tricky. Joanna reflects back on what that was like.
The story that I'm talking about today is a longer, deeper look that we took at how the TTC was handling the very difficult, very taboo subject of suicide on its tracks.
In the depths of Toronto subway, suicide hovers like a silent scream, piercing those left behind.
Typically, as a news organization, we don't report on suicide, or when we do, it has to be done in a very, very careful and thoughtful way with a lot of guidelines and principles taken into account. And for them, the Toronto Transit Commission, it was something that they never wanted to talk about publicly because of that contagion fear, the fear of copycats. So when we approached them thinking this is going to be a bit of a tough sell and it's going to be a difficult one, we were surprised at their own openness and their transparency and their willingness to tackle a really tricky, difficult subject. Why is it so important to the TTC to be so open and to tackle this in such an open way, even giving us this kind of access?
Well, I guess not talking about it hasn't worked, you know, in summary, so we needed to find some way to be responsible about communicating.
At the end of the day, we described him as a very quiet hero, and that was a man by the name of John O'Grady, who is in charge of public safety for the Toronto Transit Commission.
If you know there's something you can do that's going to save one life, then you are duty-bound to do that thing.
So he was invested in telling the story, but he was also very thoughtful and careful about how it was to be told, and so were we. And it was extraordinary, the access we got. We put cameras on track level, we put cameras on the track. We went into subway cabs with drivers who had hit somebody.
You're dreaming about it, you're thinking about it all the time. You hear someone scream and then you think about it and you're looking over it, right? So.
What strikes me about the TTC story is that there are people doing remarkable things. And you realize that our jobs as journalists and storytellers is to find people who are not waving their arms saying, look at me, but who are doing extraordinary things quietly. And the beauty of doing stories like this is that you uncover a gem of a story that's also very important. Next station. And will help people not only deal with a really tricky subject, but talk about everything that surrounds suicide, mental illness, stigma. Every conversation, I think, as a human being and as a journalist that we have that breaks down stigma is a good thing, even if they're harder stories to tell, even if they just kind of settle with you and stay with you and they're always somewhere on your mind. But I think it's our responsibility as storytellers to take on the tough ones and to do our bit, if you will, to help people feel that they're not alone.
As 2019 wraps up, we've got to look back at a big year in Canadian politics. A holiday helping of At Issue is coming up with Rosie, Althea, Andrew, and Chantal. And later, when a plane load of passengers gets diverted in Newfoundland, well, it's come from away Christmas Day. Welcome back. We have an update on a deadly plane crash in Kazakhstan's largest city.
Yes.
So that is the frightening scene near Almaty's airport. Local authorities say at least 12 people were killed. The caution, that number is fluctuating, when this twin-engine plane crashed into a two-story building shortly after takeoff. Now, the airport says there was no fire following the crash. A Reuters reporter close to the scene said there was some fog in the area. There are survivors. They are being taken to safety. The plane is operated by Beck Air. That's a low-cost domestic airline. And rescue workers in the Swiss Alps are trying to dig out people believed to be trapped by an avalanche. Authorities called in aerial support, with the helicopter clearly landing on a ski run to assist rescue operations. 2 people were pulled out with some minor injuries.
It's that time again when we look back on the political year that was, and it was a big one, 2019, busy. From tensions with China to the SNC-Lavalin controversy, which seems a long time ago, and of course the federal elections. So time to bring in At Issue for our annual holiday tradition. All here with me in Toronto, Chantal Hébert, Andrew Coyne, and Althea Raj. All right, let's start with the election. Here's a look at some of the moments from the campaign.
We've all got a choice to make.
Who can you trust to help you and your family to get ahead?
Who can you count on to fight for you?
Qui va être fidèle à ce que nous sommes?
Let's have a real discussion about all the issues that are important.
This is the most important election in Canadian history.
I dressed up in an Aladdin costume and put makeup on. I'm pissed off at myself for having done it.
You might feel like giving up in Canada. You have value, you have worth, and you are loved.
Wearing brown face is an act of open mockery and racism.
The climate crisis is real, and people are waking up.
Trudeau has said a lot of pretty words, but really gave empty promises.
But you won't march in a pride parade. What's the big deal?
There's just lots of different ways to show support to a community.
Canada, your next government will be a Liberal government.
And to Canadians in Alberta and Saskatchewan, know that you are an essential part of our great country.
And while tonight's result isn't what we wanted, I am also incredibly proud.
Okay, it's sort of insane to look at that. That was just the election. I left out like the whole other part of the year, or Ariel did, I should point out. Okay, we're gonna trip through things pretty quickly, so let's get going. Most surprising moment of the election. That's no surprise here. You all had the same answer. Chantal, you start.
Well, the brown-faced pictures, you always expect the unexpected when you cover politics, but there's always something you didn't imagine would happen.
I know.
And those pictures, you kind of sat back and thought, wow, if they'd come out earlier in Justin Trudeau's career, we would probably not be talking about him as Prime Minister.
Yikes, yeah.
Whether we should have been surprised is another question, only in the sense that how this did not come out before, how we in the media missed it, how the opposition researchers missed it, how this never came out before is remarkable in itself.
Althea?
Yeah, I mean, it was very damaging. I think for the first time, even Conservatives who thought that Andrew Scheer had no chance at all of winning thought, oh, this election is winnable. And it's quite remarkable. I mean, even for reporters who were hearing whispers about this photo potentially existing, nothing really prepares you for like actually seeing it.
And multiple photos.
Yeah, and I think frankly, it
Yeah.
hurt his brand internationally as well.
Yeah. Okay, so that, not surprising question, not a surprising answer. Hopefully it'll get more challenging now. Who gained the most from the election? Not necessarily in terms of seats, that would be too obvious, but in terms of influence or momentum. Again, you all had the same answer. Andrew, you do this one.
Fortunately, it is obvious.
Yes, again.
I mean, the Bloc Québécois was, along with the NDP, people were thinking we're going to have a very bad election result before the event. But I think they found a leader who had built up some momentum with Quebecers, and he had a good campaign. And then, lo and behold, there they were in election night in third place.
He had a great campaign.
Yeah.
And, 18 months before, they were on their deathbed. They were split as a party. They just booted out a very unpopular leader. And even people who thought they were going to do possibly better than the Conservatives did not expect that, the number one voice coming out of Quebec, aside from the Liberals, would be the Bloc Québécois.
It helped that the Parti québécois is so far from where it used to be, so that to vote for the Bloc was kind of a risk-free vote. It also helps that the other campaigns, the NDP and the Conservative, were not compelling campaigns in Quebec. So if you didn't want to vote for Justin Trudeau for whatever reason, and there are many, this was a great outlet, and it was virtually risk-free.
And the NDP was obviously not an option for a lot of Quebecers this time.
It stopped being an option when Thomas Mulcair was fired. I've argued over the years that had someone else than Jagmeet Singh become the leader, I'm not sure they would have that many more MPs in Quebec, because people kind of lost interest when they lost interest in having a leader who was ready to be prime minister.
Okay, worst political move of the election. Althea, you go first on this one.
The Scheer camp not having a clear position on abortion and gay rights, but specifically abortion. This is not something that came out of the blue. They should have had an answer for this. It was bound to happen. I mean, the Liberals have been attacking every single Conservative leader on this issue, and they've never had a leader who's as social conservative as Andrew Scheer. And the fact that this exploded even before the campaign, and they still did not have an answer till after the TVA debate, to me was completely surprising. I mean, it made them, they were speaking on both sides of their mouths. And that's entirely because Andrew Scheer did not tell caucus what his position actually was, which gave people in Quebec the ability to say what they wanted to candidates, which gave people like Lisa Raitt the ability to say something completely different on CBC programs. And that created a lot of confusion, and that is an error by Scheer in his office. And to me, that is the worst political move.
And lots of Conservatives agree with you, I think. Andrew?
I broaden it out more generally to the Conservative platform. Not just the failure to come up with a credible plan on climate change, for good or ill, but also more generally, it was a bunch of small ball, a bunch of warmed over Harperisms, boutique tax credits, tax credit for children's fitness, this kind of thing. Not going to attract new voters over towards them in any particular numbers, not going to inspire the base at all, really. I think they were hoping that Trudeau would just, quote unquote, defeat himself, and he did to some extent, but not enough.
I mean, he probably tried as hard as he could and still managed to win. So I think deciding to read the results of the Ontario election when Doug Ford won in a way that was convenient. So Doug Ford wins, ergo the carbon tax is going to be the horse to slaughter in the election. That was self-serving, but it wasn't true. And the Conservatives decided as of that moment that they were going to go all out on the carbon tax, and it was going to bring them Ontario. And of course it didn't, because a lot of the Ford vote was get rid of the Liberals at Queen's Park. The Conservatives had a leader who wanted to put in a carbon tax, Patrick Brown, 3 months before the election, and he was leading in the polls. But they didn't want to see what they didn't want to see.
Okay, I'm going to see how many more I can get through. I'm not sure. They talk a lot, these guys. Best winner of the election, Andrew.
Chrystia Freeland.
Ah.
I think when it was first talked about her being deputy prime minister, what does that really mean? We found out in the mandate letters it means a whole lot. Partly that's in tribute to the fact that she's probably one of the few ministers in that government that actually had any profile. But I think it was also in defeat. Part of the realization was that Justin Trudeau had become a bit of a liability for the party, need to be less visible, and that she could be somebody who's a more credible and appealing spokesman for the party on a lot of issues.
Chantal.
Don't disagree with that, but the big winner is the person who gets to be the prime minister. And so for me, that would be Justin Trudeau, who salvaged victory from the jaws of defeat. He gets a chance to either remake himself or to go away quietly with a successor in the wings. But one way or another, he won't be an accident. He was re-elected.
Nothing?
Yeah, despite it all, Justin Trudeau remains prime minister.
And that's enough.
That's enough.
Biggest loser of the election.
Maxime Bernier.
Yeah.
Imagine if he'd remained a productive conservative critic and had not gone to the fringes wherever he went. Yeah. He would be someone who would qualify as a leading contender to become the Conservative leader today. At this point, there's no remorse over not having had him as leader. No. He damaged himself. His party didn't go anywhere, and he doesn't have a seat anymore. I find that accumulation enough to qualify for biggest loser.
Althea.
I said Andrew Scheer, but I like her answer better.
Take it.
I mean, he did stink himself, but that happened even before the election. I think it was just
But he lost a seat.
I know, but I'm not sure he would have been able to revive his party as like one single independent MP anyways. But Andrew Scheer, I mean, I don't know that many people thought there really was a potential. I mean, we didn't know about brownface and blackface, and we didn't know what was going to happen. But I don't think that many people thought Andrew Scheer had a real shot of winning this time around. But then when he looked that he did, and the team around him kind of let that opportunity fly by. To me, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not that the Conservatives were not able to make gains, they did, but it's that Andrew Scheer, in the end, I mean, and he saw the writing on the wall by quitting. He is my biggest loser. It seems so mean to say that.
It's not mean, it's just based in fact. Go ahead, Andrew.
I think, yeah, relative to the opportunity that was in front of him, I think you have to say Scheer is the biggest loser. His defenders, and they're few, will say, well, he increased their seat count, he reduced the Liberals to a minority, but I don't think anybody thinks that was because of him, right? It was in spite of him. He didn't run a good campaign. He was not a persuasive campaigner. They had a bad platform. I think he deserved his fate.
Okay, best political play of 2019. We got to go fast, though. Yours is sort of interesting.
Yeah, it's not the best political play in the sense of advancing your own cause, but in the sense of doing what's right is the willingness of Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott to take a stand on principle and to pay the price for it. We don't see enough of that in Canadian politics.
I think we could say best political play is Jody Wilson-Raybould, but we still don't really know what her motivation was. So I don't know if that's best political play.
Now you're just judging other people's, though.
No, but mine was really, Chantal, I said the Liberals' strategy in the election campaign.
Okay, quickly, the worst political play of 2019. Quickly.
The entire Conservative campaign. They was tone deaf and off base, and they campaigned in 2019 as if it were still 2008, and without Stephen Harper. So
and had bad numbers, like had bad information, I would say, too.
Or they didn't care to have facts. That last week was a week of lies, outright lies in the face of reality. Not great.
Yours is all the way back in the spring.
The Liberal response from the Prime Minister on down to the SNC-Lavalin affair, a mixture of lies and stonewalling. They just dragged it out, made it worse for themselves. I mean, I don't think the underlying story was going to do them any favors, but it's always better in these things to get it over with rather than trying to just bluff your way through.
Last one.
My answer was also Chantal's answer and the Conservatives' handling. But I think, having thought about it earlier today, that Andrew is right. The Liberals' handling of the Jody, it's like I forgot about Jody Wilson-Raybould and the SNC-Lavalin affair, and then it was in the news, and it was like, oh wait, that did happen in this calendar year.
Yes.
They mucked that up so badly and dragged that out, and their polling numbers started tanking for like the first time.
Yeah, that's all we did for like 6 months.
Exactly.
That's all we did, yeah.
I know, I forgot, clearly.
Okay. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll let Althea refresh her memory. Adish will be back for another round, but this time we're going to look ahead to 2020 and the political stories to watch, including this one.
As our party begins to embark on this exciting opportunity, electing a new leader, my only ask to my fellow Conservatives is this: let's stay united.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Welcome back to At Issue Round 2. Don't tell anyone we got 2 blocks. We've been looking back on some of the biggest political moments of the year. We want to take a little bit of time to look ahead and make a couple predictions for 2020. Don't really call them predictions. Chantal, Andrew, and Althea all back now, because I'm not going to like hold you to it or anything like that.
Yes, you will.
No, I might. Yeah. Most promising MP for 2020. So this could be a new person who you think holds lots of promise, or someone who's there and is going to do a really good job in 2020. I'm going to start with you.
So I wrestled with this one, but then promising an MP made me think it had to be like an up-and-comer.
It can be whatever you want it to be.
I'm going to settle on Pierre Poilievre.
Oh.
Who's likely going to put his name in the hat for CBC leadership. So Pierre Poilievre is known to probably the rest of the country as this pit bull. Does not, I would say, if you were like rating his Q rating, probably doesn't have a very high Q rating, known for the so-called Unfair Elections Act. Locally, though, he's a guy who's known to get things done. He works well with others. It will be very interesting to see if Pierre Poilievre getting married, having a baby, maybe has mellowed him out a little, can bring more of a new face to Pierre Poilievre in this leadership race than we've seen.
You are going to get some nice tweets from Pierre Poilievre.
That Christmas card is on the way.
I already get a birthday card every year.
Go ahead, Andrew. You go.
I have no clue, but if I'm judging by the files that she's been handed, I'm going to say Anita Anand, rookie MP, professor of law and private life, now the new Minister of Procurement and Public Services. Among other things, she's going to have to fix the Phoenix pay system, come up with a new defense procurement process with all the mess that's been over the years. Oh, and by the way, maybe deal with Canada Post as well, which is unfixable. She's got a lot on her plate. They obviously must think very highly of her.
Yes, I don't even think I've met her yet, but good CV.
I picked Chrystia Freeland, but we talked about her, so I'm going to talk about my MP, Stephen Guilbeault, the environmentalist who has been thrown out of his comfort zone by being appointed the Minister of Heritage. There is a reason why he won a seat that hadn't been Liberal in almost 30 years and why his name is well respected in Quebec, and that is because he's managed to be an environmentalist and still talk solutions rather than point fingers. In Heritage, it's a challenging file, and it's not his file, so I'm going to be curious, A, to see how he does, but B, to see how he feels within that Liberal team and with the balance that Justin Trudeau says he's trying to find between pipelines and energy and climate change, because Stephen Guilbeault was against the Trans Mountain expansion.
Interesting voice around the cabinet table,
Yes.
at very, very least. Okay, the political story to watch in 2020. We already talked about this before you guys all saw us, but anyway, we'll see if it's the same answer now. Althea.
Conservative Party leadership race.
That's not pro-conservative. That's pro any race.
We love it.
We love leadership races.
Yes,
They're
yes.
like our Olympics.
Yeah.
So, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very interesting to see who they select as leader, what the conversation is around where the party wants to go, and then how, if that helps determine how long this Liberal minority government lasts.
The opportunity is there for the Conservatives to have a really far-reaching conversation about who they are as a party, where they stand. They've clearly come to a bit of an impasse with the old approach, racking up 80% majorities in Alberta while failing to win closely contested seats in Ontario and Quebec. My fear and frankly expectation is that they'll punt. And they'll do as parties typically do in these things, is they just go for the popular person.
The easy solution.
The easy solution that avoids those kinds of messy discussions, but we'll see.
It's not all leadership races that we find fascinating. Let's agree on that.
Yes,
but
yes,
this one
yes.
is important
Yes.
because at this point, the alternative to the Liberals is the Conservative Party. The others are very far back or not in the race. In the case of the Greens and the Bloc Québécois, they're really too far back. It is possible to have a popular leader who also takes the party somewhere else. I hope that they have some candidates on offer who do offer that and present a challenge. I know that the Liberals are a bit spooked by this change in the leadership and the way it's happening. And that stands to make the Liberals more on their game, so it's all good.
Okay, so lots to watch. You'll all be here for us to help us through it. Thanks, everyone. Let's do it again. We'll do it again next year. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue the podcast. You can look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/thenational.
And just ahead, did you hear the one about a passenger jet getting diverted in Newfoundland on Christmas Day? Come From Away, the Deer Lake edition. The moment is next. So this is Brian Snow of Deer Lake, Newfoundland. 18 years ago, he was in Gander to help during 9/11. What happened there became the inspiration for a certain hit musical. Well, yesterday, Brian Snow found himself coming to the aid of another bunch of travelers. When bad weather diverted a Toronto to St. John's WestJet flight to Deer Lake, passengers were stranded in a hotel with very little food. So Snow and his community did what Newfoundlanders always do: welcome those who come from away. And that's our moment.
It was the best Christmas Day I've ever celebrated. They were taken off the flight, taken to the Holiday Inn Express where they were given breakfast, but that was it. So I made some phone calls and then I went on Facebook. Within 45 minutes, the dining room at the hotel was packed with food.
When we finished eating, they said, as soon as you're ready, let us know and we'll take you to the airport. So my wife and I got our bags and came out to the front of the hotel to find a long line of cars all lined up to ferry people back.
People said, this is like another Come From Away. So I said, yeah, I named it Come From Away Christmas Day.
We were missing our families and realizing we weren't getting home for Christmas Day. They saw people in need who couldn't look out for themselves that day, and they stepped up.
I'm just so satisfied that they're all in St. John's and they're having their Christmas Day today.
Look at what they did. So there was so much food donated to a Hotelton to people where the hotel didn't serve any food at all except for breakfast, that they had extras and they gave it to a seniors residence. That is the National for this Thursday, December 26th.